Judge has concluded a hearing in Manhattan this afternoon on whether to allow the Trump Justice Department to drop corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove says the charges, quote, restricted Mayor Adams' ability to devote full attention and resources to legal immigration and violent crime. The mayor pleaded not guilty to charges of fraud and bribery in September and has denied any kind of quid pro quo deal with the DOJ. CBS News Justice Department correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now from outside the courthouse. Scott, you were inside the courthouse. What happened?
A marathon 90-minute hearing that concludes without a resolution. The judge here, Dale Ho, says he needs some time to unpack everything he just heard, calling it a complicated matter and one that requires further review. And this really is complicated, Lindsay. Unequivocally, this is unprecedented. You have the Department of Justice closely aligned with President Trump. It's President Trump's one-time defense lawyer arguing for the Department of Justice, Emil Bove, and the defense team for Mayor Adams on the same page, making the same argument that this case should be dropped, that it is complicating Mayor Adams' ability to be the mayor, to get national security briefings, to get sensitive information, and to help President Trump with immigration enforcement. The judge recognizes there was nobody in the courtroom today arguing on behalf of the citizens of New York who may feel victimized by the alleged crimes of Mayor Adams. So the judge is considering bringing in an outside counsel, an outside attorney to make a case to help the judge, as he said, sharpen his arguments and sharpen the decision that will come. So as of now, Mayor Eric Adams remains charged with federal corruption charges. The case has not been dismissed, but it's also worth noting, Lindsay, the judge clarified for everybody's benefit in the courtroom that the Department of Justice will withhold the ability to bring this case back in the future if and when they so choose. And that's always been a sticking point. Critics say this puts Mayor Eric Adams under the thumb of the President of the United States indefinitely.
Scott, do we know the timeline on this, if the judge is mulling over possibly bringing in another party that would be counsel to represent the side of the citizens?
We don't know the timing. I think I speak with confidence when I say everybody with their looks in the courtroom were trying to ask the court that non-verbally. When are you getting back to us here, Your Honor? But he didn't specify. I think that underscores the significance of this case and the uniqueness of the circumstances. He's going to need some time to unpack this, but I think it's easily measured in days, not weeks. He acknowledged there is a time sensitivity to all of this. The mayor is trying to run the city. There's a primary election in which the mayor is running in June, and this thing was supposed to go to trial in late April. This is a decision we expect in the coming days, at a minimum.
We've been showing video of Mayor Adams leaving the courtroom, all smiles. What can you tell us about the color inside the courtroom, given that no cameras are allowed in federal court?
Yeah, the judge asked the mayor some direct questions about his understanding of all this, his understanding of what the court is asking, or what the judge or what the prosecutors are asking. There were a couple moments, in fact, Lindsay, where the judge called Mayor Eric Adams Mr. Adams, then quickly corrected himself and said, sorry, Mayor Adams. Eric Adams answered a few questions here, and I think what was most explicit from the words of the defense attorney was an explicit denial of the quid pro quo that was alleged by a former prosecutor on this case. You'll recall the acting top prosecutor in the Southern District of New York resigned her post and protested the handling of this case by her bosses, saying there seemed to be a quid pro quo where the defense agreed to help out the president if the president's Justice Department agreed to dismiss the case. They denied those allegations, both the prosecutors and defense did, before the judge late today.
Did the judge seem to give any subtle inferences about what he perceived from the arguments of the Department of Justice, essentially that dropping the charges include fighting the weaponization of criminal justice? And I don't know how big of an argument either Adams' attorneys or the government made about this impeding his ability to do his job and run the city.
Yeah, the judge pressed the prosecutor on that, but I'd say he pressed the prosecutor gently on it, referring to one of the previous filings in this case in which the Department of Justice more explicitly detailed why they think this case should go. And the prosecutor begged off that question and said, now look at this most recent filing. Here's the argument we're presenting today, which was broader, that there's concerns about national security, with the mayor being prosecuted, his inability to get national security information, and the allegation that the Department of Justice was weaponized in bringing this case in the first place, invoking the term so often used by President Trump, that there is a weaponization they're trying to end. That motion, filed more recently, is what they're submitting to the court to consider, and the judge acknowledged that argument, but said he needs time to think through it, look through it, and have the rest of his questions answered.
Scott, what's the possibility of any other cases nationwide being looked at through this similar lens? In other words, what impact, if any, could this case and the case being dropped against Mayor Adams have on other cases that might not be out of Manhattan?
This could very much reverberate around the country, which is why I think there's such outsized interest here. This remains an enormous story in the largest city in America, but it's bigger than that, Lindsay. The questions in court today from the judge communicated that as well. Would this be the type of thing that could be done in other cases across the country, where you have a high-ranking official with a security clearance and now he or she should be pulled away from a prosecution to help him or her do their jobs back at home? Prosecutors, the Department of Justice, said yes, this is something we might do elsewhere. But I think inside the Department of Justice, from our sources, there's a different concern, that there seem to be, according to critics, political motivations here by Trump allies at the Department of Justice, and that if this case falls for a political interest, well, that could compromise criminal cases around the country. Prosecutors may be more hesitant, Lindsay, to bring a case against a Trump ally in the future, not wanting to go through this.
Scott MacFarlane, thank you so much.